So can you go through why it might not be so beneficial to a female to fast, and also the reasons why it could be for certain females?
Yeah, so I'll kind of start with a quote by, I don't know if you follow Dr. Stacey Sims. She is a nutritionist, she has a PhD. She's amazing. Like, I definitely recommend following her. She's a great book as well. And her quote is, I always steal this from her, but I always quote her, is women are not small men. And basically what this means is we're not a shrunken down, smaller version of the female, of the male physiology. We're so much more complex than that. And she actually has done a lot of reading herself around the research in fasting. And what we find is that a lot of the research around fasting has been done in men. And this is the case you'll know yourself, with a lot of research in terms of health and fitness and nutrition. Like, even during my own PhD, I'm a woman. I was a researcher, and I was also omitting females from my research because they are complex and there's so many variables when it comes to their menstrual cycle. So unfortunately, when it comes to fasting and a lot of the other research, women are omitted. So the issue is that we're taking the research that's been done in men when it comes to fasting, which is shown to have massive benefits, not just in terms of body composition, especially in terms of cognitive performance as well, and just kind of overall longevity and overall health. And there is huge amount of benefits, but we're taking this and just applying it to women when our physiology is very, very different to that. So it's just a case that we actually don't know, from a research standpoint, we don't know the effects of fasting in women. I know anecdotally from working with clients that there are, and this is not to say that all women can't fast. It's what I mean is that it's a case that it's not a case that every woman can fast, if that makes sense. So basically, like, it really comes down to hormones. So when you're fasting, when you think about it, when you wake up in the morning and you don't eat breakfast, your cortisol is already at its highest first thing in the morning. It's what makes us wakes us up in the morning. It's what makes us alert. So if you are skipping a meal on top of that, that's going to again release cortisol and adrenaline, or stress hormones, from our adrenal glands. So when it comes to our female hormones, our progesterone, our estrogen, and our ability to reproduce, or our ability to create our menstrual cycle is so sensitive to these changes or these increases in cortisol and adrenaline. So if we are continuously kind of in this, like, you know yourself, the kind of a sympathetic as opposed to a parasympathetic nervous system state. So we have our two nervous system state. We have our sympathetic, which is kind of our fight or flight response, and then we have our parasympathetic, which is kind of like our rest or digest. It's when we're chilled out, it's when we're doing meditation, it's when we're breathing. We're supposed to be in our parasympathetic state most of the time. The reason that we have our sympathetic nervous system is to prepare us to run from a predator, to prepare us to run from danger. But unfortunately, we are continuously, a lot of us are chronically stressed, and we're continuously in this sympathetic nervous system, this fight or flight response state. And it's not just a case that, like, I'm not just saying this is just for people who are stressed, but it's people who are just doing. Like, I'm literally, like, putting my hand up here. I'm so guilty of this. But I think as well, like, we won't go into it, but women are just expected to do so much. And I think we are not even that we're expected, but we place so much expectations on ourselves to do absolutely everything. You have to be a mother, but you also have to run a business, and you also have to, but oh, you're running a business. Do you not look after your child? And oh, you're looking after your child all the time. Do you not have aspirations to run a business? So it's so overwhelming, and we're continuously doing, and we're constantly in this sympathetic nervous system state. So just to kind of backtrack a little bit, if we are adding fasting in on top of that, which we know puts us into this kind of fight or flight response, what can happen is, as I said, our female hormones are so sensitive to changes in, or especially to being chronically in this kind of high cortisol state. And what can happen is it just interacts with our hormones. The big thing is that it actually interacts with our hormone progesterone. So progesterone is a hormone that we create and that we synthesize after we ovulate. So our menstrual cycle is split up into two different phases: our follicular phase, which is before ovulation, and our luteal phase, which is after ovulation. And in our luteal phase, after ovulation, that's when our progesterone is at its highest. And progesterone is a really, really great hormone. It's amazing. We love progesterone. It's our zen hormone. It has anti-anxiety effects. It makes us chilled out. It also makes us a little bit more introverted. So women will notice when they get more in tune with their cycle that they feel more introverted. They just kind of want to, they don't want to socialize as much, like kind of in their luteal phase after ovulation, especially coming up towards their period. So it's an anti-anxiety kind of introverted chill out hormone. But the interesting thing is that cortisol and progesterone actually compete for each other. So if we're continuously pushing out cortisol, low level cortisol all of the time, it takes from our progesterone. So all of a sudden, when we don't make enough progesterone, that's when we start to really, really suffer from PMS. So this is a huge thing. So any clients who come to me who or come to us who have really bad PMS, the first thing I'm going to look at is their stress. And it's the last thing that people want to look at because they're like, what supplement do I need to take? What nutrition plan do I need to follow? I'm like, you need to just calm down. You need to stop doing everything. And this is essentially what fasting feeds into. If fasting is going to produce cortisol, it's therefore going to kind of rob us of progesterone. Therefore, we're going to get like bad PMS or sore boobs or cramps or migraines. We're feeling really, really low, really emotional, crying for 4 or 5 days before our periods. And like what's really interesting is you'll notice that if a woman kind of gets more in tune with her cycle and starts to track, like I noticed last month, for like to be totally honest, last month I was just dead. I was so lethargic, I was so emotional, I felt like my life was falling apart. But if I looked back on the month that I'd had such a stressful month. I was skipping meals, not intentionally, just wasn't making time to eat. I was overdoing it in the gym and just trying to do so much, wasn't on top of my sleep. So my point is, when you start to get more in tune and understand how these changes and fluctuations impact, or sorry, changes in cortisol and things that we do impact our hormones, you start to realize, okay, I feel like this because I wasn't looking after myself this month. Now I need to just cop on and stop skipping breakfast and stop skipping meals and grabbing something here and there. Like focus on my supplements, focus on my sleep, and maybe pare it back a little bit with training and maybe pare it back a little bit with fasting. So that's, yeah, a really long-winded way of answering your question around fasting in females. And again, like just to kind of say, as you alluded to it earlier on, it's not a case that like nobody can fast. If you're a woman, you can't fast, but it's a case of looking at all of your stressors. So if you're waking up first thing in the morning, you're having coffee. So caffeine again is a stimulant. It's going to release cortisol and adrenaline. If you're going to the gym fasted, you're doing a session, like yes, a training session is going to clear your head, but at the same time, when you know yourself from your work, when you apply progressive overload to a training program, it's a stress. You're trying to stress your body out in order for it to adapt and get stronger and get faster and grow, but essentially it is a stress. So if you're waking up first thing in the morning, cortisol is high, you're drinking your coffee, and that's your stimulant, you're fasting, and then you're going to the gym. And then at the end of the month, you've really bad PMS. That's the reason, because you're doing too, like you're just doing too much. So it's a case of looking at everything. So maybe you can fast if your nutrition is on point for the rest of the day. Maybe you're not consuming much caffeine and you're on top of your sleep. Your training like is sufficient, but it's not too much. And obviously you don't have any psychological stressors. Then okay, maybe you can fast, but there's no hard and fast rules. I find when it comes to females, there's some women that can completely get away with fasting and have perfect periods and go on to have no fertility issues whatsoever. And then there's other women who, once we cut out fasting, we realize how detrimental it had been to their health and things start to work more efficiently.